The call came as I was handing out tambourines to second graders. Fairgrove wanted me back. Full control. Any salary. I smiled and said no. Hey there. Welcome back to today's story. Maybe you're cooking, maybe you're chilling after work. Either way, I'm glad you're here. Today's story starts with something many of us know too well. Being left out by the very people who are supposed to love you the most, your own family. Have you ever felt like the outsider in your own home? Like no matter what you do, it's never enough? Stick around, because the story isn't just about pain. It's about growth, power, and building something so beautiful it leaves your past in the dust. And hey, if stories like this resonate with you, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. It helps me keep sharing powerful stories just like this one. All right, let's dive in.
I knew something was off the second I walked into the faculty lounge. Mr. Langford was standing next to the coffee machine, grinning like he'd just been cast in a toothpaste commercial. His too white smile, his overly enthusiastic hand claps, it all screamed, I'm about to make a wildly bad decision and pretend it's for the good of the program. We were barely 2 minutes into the staff meeting when he dropped the bomb. Starting next semester, Sierra Blake will be stepping in as director of the Performance Arts program. I didn't blink. I didn't flinch. But internally, I could hear something crack, like the high G string on a violin snapping mid-concert. I'd seen this coming. I just didn't expect it to sting this much. Let me back up for a second. Hi, I'm Nora Bell. I'm a pianist, a composer, and for the past 9 years, a music teacher at Fairgrove Academy for the Arts, a private school where talent is cherished until someone trendier shows up with better Instagram filters. I've spent nearly a decade building the soul of this department. I've stayed late organizing student recitals, rewrote the outdated curriculum by candlelight, literally during a power outage, and even taught 3 kids to sight read using gummy bears. True story. And yet, here we are, watching a 26-year-old with a viral TikTok series called Singing with Sierra get handed the keys to the kingdom. Look, I don't hate Sierra. She's energetic, charming, and she can belt a B-flat like nobody's business. But leadership, planning a semester-long performance calendar, coaching a shy freshman through stage fright without turning them into a sobbing mess, that takes more than ring lights and hashtags. Mr. Langford didn't even look at me when he made the announcement. He just kept reading his notes, oblivious to the quiet emotional decapitation happening 3 feet away. When the meeting ended, Sierra bounced over to me with the energy of a cheerleader on Red Bull. I'm so nervous excited. You've always been such an inspiration, Nora. Big shoes to fill. I smiled. I'm a professional. That's what professionals do. Then I went home, sat on the cold tile of my kitchen floor, and cried like someone had died. I didn't cry because I lost a title. I cried because I realized something worse. I had become invisible. Not just overlooked, not just undervalued, but unseen. All my late nights, the extra rehearsals, the quiet pep talks before performances, they had melted into the background, like warm-up notes no one claps for. I called my sister, Maya. She's a psychologist and the only person in my life who can dissect my trauma and recommend a good Pinot Noir. After listening to my rant and me blowing my nose like a malfunctioning trombone, she said something that stuck. Maybe it's time to stop playing their song. At first, I didn't get it, but later that night, staring at my dusty upright piano, I understood. She didn't mean give up. She meant stop playing for their approval. Stop trying to earn recognition in a room that had already turned down the volume on me. The next morning, I walked into school like nothing had changed, smiled at Langford, clapped for Sierra, helped a student tune their cello. But inside, I'd started composing something new. I didn't know exactly what it was yet, but it wasn't for them. Not anymore. I didn't rage quit. I didn't throw a chair or storm into Langford's office demanding answers I already knew I wouldn't get. No, I did something worse. I smiled. I showed up every day with my coffee mug and lesson plans like nothing had changed. Because on the outside, it hadn't. But inside, I had quietly changed my key. I wasn't playing their song anymore. I was composing my own. That Monday, instead of rewriting a spring concert schedule I knew would be handed off to someone else, I started something I called the Quiet Project. It wasn't a document, not yet. It was just awareness. I started noticing which pieces of the department had my fingerprints all over them. The vocal warm-ups I created that helped kids hit notes they thought were impossible. The parent outreach program I'd built to boost attendance at student shows. The soundproof panels in room 208 that I installed myself after facilities ignored my work orders for 6 months. I started documenting it all. At first, it felt petty, like I was gathering proof for a fight I didn't even plan to have. But slowly, it shifted. I wasn't collecting receipts. I was remembering my worth. And let me tell you, remembering your worth in a place that works so hard to make you forget it, that's a quiet rebellion, the most dangerous kind. By week 3, I'd stopped volunteering for committee work. Not out of spite, just clarity. When Langford asked if I could organize the upcoming alumni fundraiser, I smiled and said, "I think Sierra should lead that. It'll be a great leadership opportunity." He blinked, twice. That weird thing he does when confused but trying not to show it. I also started eating lunch outside. Small change, big impact. Suddenly, I wasn't available for quick favors or just one question. I was building boundaries, brick by brick, in the sun. And while everyone assumed I was just adjusting to the leadership change, I was building my next move. Here's the thing about working in a creative environment. People assume you're too emotional to be strategic, that if you're passionate, you must not be calculating. They forget that musicians know structure. We know how to hide chaos inside harmony. We write crescendos you don't even realize are happening until the room is shaking. I started reaching out to former students, ones I'd mentored years ago, now working in music, theater, even arts management. Not to network, not yet, just to reconnect, see how they were doing, see if they remembered what it felt like to be seen in that classroom. They did. And it stirred something I hadn't felt in years. Possibility. That week, I opened a blank Google Doc and typed the words, Bright Note Collective, a space for musicians to feel, grow, and be heard. It was the first note in a new composition. Bright Note wasn't a business plan yet. It was more like a whisper. But whispers can echo if you listen hard enough. I didn't tell anyone, not even Maya. I wasn't ready for outside opinions. I just needed to hear myself think without noise, without Langford's jargon or Sierra's brand strategy. Instead, I listened to the kids. Like Caleb, one of my seniors, quiet, brilliant, battling stage fright like it was a full-time job. He came into class one afternoon looking defeated. "Miss Bell, Sierra said my solo should be more upbeat, but it doesn't feel right." "Then don't change it," I told him. "Play what you need to play." His shoulders relaxed, like I'd given him permission to breathe. That's when I knew. I didn't want to fight to be heard at Fairgrove. I wanted to build a place where people never had to ask to be. So I kept teaching, but now every lesson, every moment was part of something larger. A transition no one else could hear yet, but I could. I was working on a quiet crescendo, and when it finally peaked, it wouldn't be for applause. It would be for freedom. It happened on a Thursday. You know, the kind Thursday that feels like it's been going on since Tuesday. I was halfway through a lesson on card inversions when an email popped up on the projector. Langford had forgotten to disable notifications again. Subject, urgent staff realignment. Please read. I saw Sierra's name before I could close the window. She'd been appointed interim coordinator for the district-wide youth music showcase, a job that, 5 years ago, I practically built from scratch. I'd pitched the idea, hosted the first 3 events, even drove 2 kids home during a blizzard when the buses didn't show. No mention of that, of course. I didn't flinch, just nodded and told my students to ignore the pop-up. But inside, I felt nothing. Not anger, not sadness, just quiet. And that's when it hit me. I wasn't numb. I was free. Something had shifted. The applause I used to chase, the validation I used to crave, I didn't need it anymore. And that silence, it didn't feel like a void. It felt like space. Room to breathe. Room to build. That night, I finalized the outline for BrightNote, real structure this time. I mapped out classes, age groups, tuition models. I looked up community grant options, created a folder titled Freedom Plan. I even Googled commercial rentals near the art district and bookmarked a crumbling brick storefront with terrible lighting and perfect acoustics. The next day, I skipped lunch and drove across town to see it. The place was rough. Chipped tile, weird smell, a ceiling fan that had clearly given up on life. But I walked in and thought, yeah, this could be it. I stood in the center of the room and hummed a G. The note echoed, pure and raw. That one sound gave me more goosebumps than 6 years of staff meetings ever had. Back at school, things were unraveling, slowly, then all at once. The spring recital had been restructured under Sierra's vision, less classical, more TikTok-friendly. The kids weren't thrilled. Some of them, like Caleb, were downright heartbroken. "It doesn't feel like us anymore," he whispered one day after class. I didn't say anything. I just squeezed his shoulder and handed him a key. Not metaphorically, a literal piano key, one I'd kept in my drawer for years, broken off from the old upright before it was replaced. It wasn't functional, but it meant something. "Hang on to it," I said. "It'll open the right doors someday." 2 weeks later, I submitted my resignation. Langford blinked in that same stunned, reptilian way he always did when something didn't compute. "Nora, is this about Sierra? Because if there's been tension, we can mediate." I cut him off with a smile. "It's not about Sierra, it's about me. I've outgrown the space I'm in." He asked if I'd at least stay through the summer session. I said no. And just like that, I was done. No farewell emails, no party, no plaque. I left the building quietly, carrying a box of music scores, an old mug, and a half-dead ficus plant that had survived 4 winters better than I had. You'd think I'd feel triumphant or scared or something, but honestly, I felt still. Not stagnant, still. Like a calm before the real song starts. In the days that followed, I met with a nonprofit consultant Maya recommended, applied for 2 arts education grants, and reconnected with 3 parents whose kids I'd taught years ago. One of them offered to sponsor a scholarship fund before I even asked. BrightNote was no longer a dream. It was a quiet storm forming just beyond the horizon. One morning, while printing the first draft of my business plan at the local library, because my printer still thought cyan ink was optional, I ran into Caleb and his mom. He looked taller already, freer somehow. "You're really doing it," he said, not as a question, as a statement of fact. I nodded. "And you're coming with me, if you want." His smile could power the whole town. That night, I played piano at home for the first time in weeks. Not for practice, not for performance, just because I wanted to. And as I played, I thought about every student who ever whispered, "I don't think I'm good enough." I thought about how many times I'd said it to myself, and how no one ever deserved to feel like background music in their own life. The applause may have stopped, but the music was just getting started. The first Monday after I left Fairgrove felt like summer break and a midlife crisis rolled into one. No morning rush, no lukewarm staff room coffee, no Langford pretending to understand pedagogy while mispronouncing Debussy. Just me, my pajamas, and a blinking cursor on a grant application I didn't understand a word of. Starting something from scratch sounds romantic until you're knee-deep in tax forms, lease agreements, and the terrifying realization that being your own boss means you're also your own tech support, janitor, marketing team, and HR department. Still, every to-do list scribble felt electric. I wasn't chasing deadlines made by other people. I was building something that mattered. And more importantly, I wasn't alone. By week 2, I had an attorney friend of Maya's review my lease for the little brick building near the Arts District. He told me, "It's a mess, but it's a charming mess," and gave me a decent rate. I signed it on a Wednesday, standing under a ceiling fan that still made a death rattle every 10 seconds. Bright Note Collective officially had a home. The space didn't have mirrors, proper acoustics, or even Wi-Fi at first, but it had light, it had potential, it had intention, and sometimes that's enough to get you starting. I sent out a quiet email to a handful of families, old students, and music friends. Bright Note is a new kind of music space where art isn't performed for approval, but practiced for meaning. Come as you are. Let's make something beautiful. I expected maybe 5 replies. I got 32. By the end of the month, I was teaching in a room with peeling paint, secondhand folding chairs, and a schedule that barely left me time to breathe. And I had never been happier. Meanwhile, back at Fairgrove, the cracks were starting to show. Parents were pulling their kids from recital prep. Caleb told me the spring concert was being restructured again, this time to include a mashup of Bohemian Rhapsody and Baby Shark. Sierra was struggling to manage stage logistics, and Langford had apparently held a staff meeting that ended with him shouting about professional loyalty and storming out. I didn't laugh. Not really. Okay, maybe a little. Then came the email. Subject: Coffee from Sierra Blake. I stared at it for a full minute, wondering if it was a prank or a trap. But something in the subject line felt real, not curated, not scripted. We met at a little cafe near campus, neutral territory. She showed up late, wearing sunglasses indoors like someone trying to disappear into themselves. "I'm miserable," she blurted before we even ordered. I said nothing, just sipped my coffee and waited. "Everything's falling apart," she went on. "The kids are checked out, the parents are furious. Langford keeps blaming me, but he won't give me the authority to fix anything." I nodded slowly, still quiet. "They talk about you like you're the boogeyman," she said, a half laugh, half sigh. Apparently, the phrase, "that's not how Nora did it," is now banned in staff meetings. I didn't smile, but I didn't feel bitter either. Just sad. For her, for the kids, for all the years I spent trying to earn approval from people who only knew how to react to failure, not prevent it. "Why are you telling me this?" I finally asked. Sierra looked up, and for once, the polish was gone. No persona, just a young woman who'd gotten over her head. "Because I want to work for you," she said. That made me choke on my coffee. "Excuse me?" "I know it's weird, and I get it if you say no, but you built something that's actually working, something people believe in. I want to be part of that." I studied her face, looking for any trace of manipulation, but all I saw was exhaustion, and something else, something I recognized, the desperate hunger to be seen, truly seen, for what you can be, not just what you've been labeled. "Send me your resume," I said, "and we'll talk." We did talk, for hours, about music, teaching, burnouts, social media, shame. By the end, I wasn't angry anymore, just determined. To make Bright Note a space where people like Sierra didn't have to perform worthiness just to be allowed in the room. 3 weeks later, she joined the team. Turns out, she's phenomenal with beginner students. She makes them laugh. She finds ways to turn pop songs into rhythm exercises. She still has a lot to learn, but she wants to learn, and that's more than I ever saw at Fairgrove. Around the same time, I got a voicemail from Langford. Nora, I'd like to reconnect. Perhaps we could discuss potential collaboration between Fairgrove and Brightnote. I didn't return the call. Not because I was petty, because I was busy. By month 3, we had 47 students enrolled, a parent volunteer network, and a scholarship fund fully funded by donations from former alumni I hadn't heard from in years. We even had a logo, designed by Caleb. It's terrible, and I love it. Some nights I still sat in the studio after everyone had gone home, listening to the echo of missed notes, warm-ups, laughter, watching dust float through golden light. This was music. Not performance, not perfection, just presence. And when people asked how I did it, how I left security and started over, I never had the right answer. Because it wasn't one big leap. It was a series of small, quiet choices, a dozen no thank yous, and one whispered yes. But the moment the tune changed, that was when I stopped waiting to be invited to the stage and built my own damn concert hall. 6 months to the day after I walked out of Fairgrove for the last time, I got a call from what number I didn't recognize. I was standing in the Brightnote lobby, holding a crate of rhythm eggs and trying to convince a 6-year-old not to eat them like candy when my phone buzzed. "Nora, it's Langford." I stepped outside. The kid licked a rhythm egg anyway. Classic. "Things at Fairgrove have shifted," Langford said, his voice tighter than a wound violin string. "We've lost some major enrollment. Parents are asking questions. Some of the board members have suggested we reach out." I didn't say anything. "We'd like to bring you back, at a leadership level, full program control, name your salary." It should have felt like a triumph, like the long-awaited moment where I'd flip my hair and say, "Told you so." But I didn't feel victorious. I felt done. "I appreciate the offer," I said, my voice calm, "but I've already built something better." He hesitated, like maybe he thought I was bluffing. "Nora, think about the impact you could have if you came back." "Langford," I replied, "I am having impact, just not for you." And that was it. No fireworks, no gloating, just a full circle moment, and the quiet satisfaction of choosing not to step backward, even when the door swings wide open. That weekend, we hosted Brightnote's first community showcase. No fancy lights, no printed programs, just folding chairs, fairy lights, and a room packed with families and neighbors holding takeout coffee and damp Kleenex. Caleb opened the show with a cello solo he composed himself. Halfway through, he broke a string. I watched him pause, take a breath, and keep going like it was part of the piece. That's resilience. That's music. After the final bow, a mother came up to me, teary-eyed. Her daughter, Mia, had refused to speak in public for years. That night, she'd sung a full verse with her eyes closed, hands shaking, but voice steady. "She told me Brightnote feels like a place where her voice is safe," the mom whispered. "Do you know what that's worth?" I didn't. Not in dollars, anyway, but I knew exactly what it meant. Weeks passed. We got local press coverage, then a surprise email from the Arts Council offering a grant we hadn't even applied for. Someone had nominated us. One of our students won a regional songwriting contest. Another got accepted into a conservatory in New York. And slowly, the narrative changed. People stopped asking why I left Fairgrove. They started asking how I built Brightnote. Sierra, now officially our director of early programs, told me over lunch one day, "You know, they still won't let anyone mention your name at faculty meetings." I raised an eyebrow. "Apparently, it disrupts morale." I laughed, not out of spite, but because it was absurd. To think I used to bend myself into origami for people who couldn't even say my name without choking. Let them choke. We had more important things to do. By month 10, Bright Note had 72 enrolled students, a wait list, and our first intern, a high school junior who reminded me of me at that age, quiet, observant, underestimated. We hired Tanya, a classically trained violinist who'd been overlooked at her old academy for being too intense. At Bright Note, she thrived. She runs our performance mentorship program now. Wren, remember her, Langford's former assistant? She quit and joined us last month. She manages our operations like a symphony, efficient, precise, and with killer taste in snacks. Every time I walked through the door, I felt it. The thing I never had at Fairgrowth, belonging. One rainy Tuesday, I stayed late after class. The building was empty, the lights were dim, and I sat down at the baby grand we'd crowdfunded 6 months ago. I played something simple, slow, nothing dramatic. Halfway through, I stopped and cried. Not sad tears, not angry ones. The kind of tears that come when you realize you've been holding your breath for years and finally exhale. I had spent so long trying to be enough for people who only measured worth in applause, perfection, and politics. So long thinking the rejection was a reflection of me. But it wasn't rejection, it was redirection. Every no I got at Fairgrove was nudging me toward this, toward freedom, toward clarity, toward music that wasn't filtered through someone else's standards. And you know what? I never needed their stage. I just needed to stop asking permission to build my own. So if you're still reading this, and maybe you're in a place like I was, where you feel unseen, passed over, or boxed in, I want to tell you something. You're not broken. You're just in the wrong room. You don't have to perform worthiness for people who've already decided not to recognize it. Sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do isn't to fight for a seat at their table. It's to build your own table. And if you do, make room. Someone like Sierra might need a seat. Someone like Caleb might need a key. Someone like you might need the reminder that your voice matters, that your music is enough, and that the encore, the real encore, isn't about going back. It's about choosing yourself.
If any part of this story resonated with you, if you've ever stayed too long in a place that didn't see your worth, or walked away not out of anger, but out of clarity, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment, share your story. Let's make this more than just a monologue. Let's turn it into a conversation. And hey, if you found even a flicker of truth in what I shared today, don't forget to like, subscribe, and stick around for the next story. Because trust me, there's always another chapter worth telling. Thanks for listening. Truly.